First of all, thank you very much for the invitation here today. Yesterday I had a little tour around your beautiful country. I visited a few farms and I was truly amazed. Really liked the things I've seen here today. And thanks for the kind introduction before. As said, my name is Allard Jellema and I'm a policy researcher at Wageningen Social and Economic Research, one of the research institutes within Wageningen University and Research. Before I go into the content today, I would also like you to introduce to Floor Geerling-Eijf. She is the one who has helped me to prepare this presentation. And I'm a little bit of an AKIS expert, but she is a really good AKIS expert. There is a lot to tell about the Dutch agricultural knowledge and innovation system. Too much to tell here within half an hour, but there are a few aspects I will address here today. First, I will get you a little bit of a deep dive into the Dutch agricultural sector. So some figures, just to get you acquainted with how the sector works. Then we dive into a historical perspective of the Dutch AKIS system, to get you acquainted with how the system we have today was actually developed. Then part 3, the most important part here today, is how the Dutch AKIS system works, and I will specifically focus on the role of advisors in this part, and why they are so important in the Dutch agricultural system. And we end with the challenges that we as the Dutch agricultural system face, for example, when it comes to sustainability. Before we start, these are two very important reports published by the OECD in 2015 and 2023. The reports are basically the same, and they have analyzed the Dutch agricultural system. And of much that I present today comes from these two policy documents. So these two policy documents are basically an evaluation of the Dutch agricultural innovation system. Knowledge and innovation system, I should say. So we start with the first part. I'm going to give you a deep dive into some figures about the Dutch agricultural knowledge or the Dutch agricultural and horticultural sectors, how they work and how they were established. First of all, this is a quote from that report I spoke about earlier. I will just read it out loud. The Dutch food, agriculture and horticulture sector is efficient, productive and export-oriented. This quote summarizes very well what the Dutch agricultural sector is today. Later on, I will also show you some of the challenges we face, but for now we keep it to this. These are some essential things why the Netherlands has become so efficient and famous for its global agricultural production. First of all, we have quite a mild maritime climate. We have a very flat terrain. I've seen flat parts here in Cyprus as well, but in the Netherlands everything is flat. We have access to sea. One of the biggest ports in Europe is located in the Netherlands, the port of Rotterdam. And we have also access to big rivers, like the River Rhine, that flows all the way to Switzerland, which allows us to access countries like, for example, Germany. And of course, our geographical location and size. So we are located in the middle of Europe, close to seas, which brings us advantages for agricultural production. These are some figures about the Dutch agricultural production. So first of all, we have around 50,000 farmers in all kinds of sectors, from dairy sector to arable sector and to horticulture. Around 157,000 people are working within these sectors. And these are not only the primary sectors, like for example the farms, but also the connected sectors, like for example food processing. And then we have around 1,800 hectares of cultivated land that is currently in use by the Dutch agricultural sector, so around 43%. This is a very important picture from the European Union, from the European Commission. It just shows that we as the Netherlands have one of the highest livestock densities in Europe. 3.4 livestock units per hectare, which is quite high, one of the highest in Europe, which also comes with its problems, of course. And there's some more figures. These are quite important. The share of our GDP of agriculture is quite high, with 6.9%. The R&D intensity, so how much we actually spend on research located to agriculture, is around 2.26%. And then a big problem right now in the Netherlands is that we have the highest land prices in all of Europe, with around 85,000 euros per hectare, which is extremely expensive, which also causes problems. This is the average, but there are also areas in the Netherlands which are way higher, above 100,000 euros. Then I will give you a short introduction to one of the most important sectors we have in the Netherlands. There are many more, but due to time limits, I will just spend some time on 4 sectors, starting with dairy, one of the most important sectors in the Netherlands. We have around 13,000 farms in the Netherlands, with the average of 110 animals, cows in this case. Then we move to arable farming, and arable farming are like from onions to carrots, potatoes of course, which you also grow a lot here. We have around 11,000 farms, and the average size of the farm is 42 hectares. And then we move a little bit. This is something the Netherlands is extremely well known for, greenhouse farming. Also here we have a lot of farms, around 3,000. And these are of course a bit smaller farms, like 3.5 hectares. But I will show you a picture later on that illustrates why these are a bit smaller. And then the famous flower fields in the Netherlands. The season is now over, but a few weeks ago the Netherlands was colored again with flower bulb cultivation, and we have around 1,600 farms in this category. This is a picture that very well illustrates the Netherlands, and especially the horticultural sector, the greenhouse sector. This is in the west of the Netherlands. This is just glass. We grow tomatoes, paprikas, cucumbers, etc. And then one aspect that's very important to Dutch agricultural culture, and that is that there are a lot of cooperatives in all these sectors. I will just highlight this sector, and that's dairy processors. We have around 26 dairy processors in the Netherlands, like for example Friesland Campina. 5 of these are cooperatives, but most of the milk that is actually processed goes to these 5 cooperatives. The biggest being Friesland Campina, with around 9,000 members. All right. Then some figures. The Netherlands is, after the United States of America, the biggest exporter of food. There is a little catch though, because that also includes foods that are imported to the Netherlands and then exported again, like for example cocoa. We imported in 2024 around 86.1 billion euros and exported the extraordinary amount of 128.9 billion euros. And like I said, these are not only products that are produced in the Netherlands, but also products that are imported and then exported immediately. And these are the 5 most important export products: flowers, dairy and eggs, meat, cocoa. Like I said, we don't produce any cocoa. It is imported and then exported again, and vegetables. And this is a very important one. Around 2/3 of dairy produced in the Netherlands is actually exported to most of all our neighboring countries. When we say we are a world exporter, we actually mean a European exporter, because most of the food that is produced in the Netherlands ends up within the European Union or within Great Britain. 72% we are talking about. The rest goes to the rest of the world. And these are our most important export partners. Once again, these figures show billions in euros. So, for example, last year in 2024, we exported for 10.9 billion euros of food exports to France. And the other figures speak for themselves. So, very important countries for us are Italy, Germany, Belgium, and the United Kingdom. So, countries close to us. All right. Now I will give you a short dive into the Dutch AKIS system. But before we can do that, it's very important that you get a bit of a historical perspective so that you understand where we are currently standing, why it has developed in a certain way. And it starts with 1945, the end of the Second World War. In Netherlands, just like in many other countries in Europe, we faced major food shortages. So the government decided in response to put all its effort on production and efficiency to make sure that those food shortages would never appear again. This led to the formation of what we called, and sorry for this word, I can't pronounce it myself, the tripartite, or whatever, which is basically made up of 3 bodies. So first of all, research, in which my organization, Wageningen University and Research, has had a primary role. Education, which translates research and knowledge into curriculum for future entrepreneurs and farmers. And of course, why we're here today, the extension services. This triangle was very important in the beginning after the Second World War to make what the Netherlands is today, focusing on efficient agricultural production and making sure that food shortages never would appear again. Like I said, this mode of knowledge transfer focused on increasing yields, mechanization, so technology transferred, and of course, efficiency. And then we move to the 1980s and 2000, quite a big gap. And here a lot changed, because the Dutch state went into liberalization and privatization mode. So a lot of the extension services that were known for Dutch agriculture were suddenly privatized. This led to the dismantling of a lot of public extension services. And a lot of new extension services were created, but not publicly, but privately owned. And research funding, a very important one for me, became more competitive. So we had to fight more for the available research funding that was available at the time. This led to quite a big problem for the Netherlands, fragmentation of the current Dutch AKIS system. So before we had this triangle, which was quite easy to follow, and nowadays we have a system, still actually, that's quite fragmented, with a lot of actors everywhere participating in the Dutch agricultural knowledge and innovation system. Yes, and then we move on to the 2000s and today. A lot has changed. The polarization, there is still this huge fragmentation going on in the Dutch agricultural knowledge system, which is currently being addressed. More on that later. But we also see a huge polarization between different parties. But the focus of today, of the current Dutch AKIS system, is still on making sure that we have high levels of knowledge and leading research, to which my organization is one of the key contributors. Strong collaboration between actors, which is essential in our AKIS system, focused on innovation and competitiveness, which has actually been the case since 1945, the end of the Second World War. But, and this is a big problem for the Netherlands, it is extremely complex, our AKIS system, and fragmented. So now we dive into some of the key features of the Dutch agricultural system. And like I said, it is very complex, so I won't be able to address all of them. I will focus on a few. And this is an attempt of my colleague and I to just visualize how the Dutch AKIS system works, especially knowledge flows. So these arrows represent knowledge flows between the different actors in the Dutch agricultural system. So I am here, Wageningen Research. We have the governments over here, and the parties in brown or gold, whatever color you can see, are the private actors. These are the organizations that represent farmers, for example, branch organizations, and here are the education related to the AKIS system. So, for example, universities of applied science and vocational education for farmers. And of course, very important, the agribusiness itself, like the processors, like Friesland Campina. In the middle, we have, of course, the farmer, about which this all is so important. Like I said, I can supply you with the pictures because this is a lot to grasp in one go. And I think the presentations will be made available so you can check it out a bit more in detail. These are some of the issues we are going to address today here during this presentation. I'm not going to address the operational groups. That's for tomorrow's presentation. But the other 5 issues I will actually address. We start with a stop sector approach. And like I said before, collaboration is key in this system. This is what one of the people at the ministries told me today, to put a lot of emphasis on this. Because the Dutch system really depends on a lot of collaboration between the different actors. Farmers, processors, ministries, education, etc. Without this collaboration, the Netherlands would not be what it is today as a successful agricultural exporter. One of the best examples of this today, this approach to working together, is a project that was introduced in 2011, the so-called top sector diamond approach, in which government, knowledge institutions like mine and many others, the private sector and civil society are working together on a myriad of issues. And they work together on quite a lot of issues. Like I said, this was introduced in 2011 by the Dutch government to make sure that spending on these issues is improving. And we're talking about top sectors, and there are a lot of top sectors in the Netherlands. And these top sectors refer to the most important sectors, most important 10 sectors economically in the Netherlands. So it's not just farming. The farmings are here. This is about horticulture and this is about agriculture. But there are also a lot of others, for example, relate to the health sector, data, ICT, chemicals, etc. But we will focus, obviously, on the last two down here. The top sector for horticulture and the top sector for agri and food, just agriculture. And we will just focus on this one for today. So first of all, the top sector agri approach is basically a little organization that initiates funds for research and innovation projects and makes sure that the knowledge that is produced within these projects is actually valorized. We do this by also working together with other top sectors. So we have these top sectors, these two work together, but we, for example, also work together with the maritime, the water top sector, which is a very important one in the Netherlands. For these top sectors, the Dutch government has established a so-called knowledge and innovation agenda, which includes topics which are currently very important for the Dutch government to address. For example, sustainability issues, social issues, and economic issues. And currently, for the year 2026, around 10.2 million euros is available in funding to do research within these top sectors. And once again, this is an attempt to improve the Dutch agriculture ecosystem. And OECD, in the report I showed you before, came to this conclusion, that the top sector approach has created successful partnerships between government, companies, and research institutions to deploy private research funding to improve the performance and competitiveness of the sector. So it has been very successful. A lot of the research projects I personally am involved in are also going through this top sector approach. All right, like I said, the top sector approach is a way of collaborating, and collaboration is key to this system. And collaboration is also partly established through knowledge hubs, and we have quite a lot of them in the Netherlands. These knowledge hubs are specifically focused on special issues. We, for example, have the Farm of the Future, which I will tell you more about later on, the World Horticulture Center, in which a lot of parties work together on horticultural issues, the Horti Science Park in the Netherlands, the location I work, the campus of Wageningen University and Research, and the dairy campus, where a lot of testing is going on with the newest dairy technologies and sustainability issues. The dairy campus is part of Wageningen University and Research, but on all these locations, a lot of people are working together from different parts, so farmers, cooperatives, network organizations, etc. And one important one is recently they have been established for a few years now, is the World Horticultural Center that is located here in the west of the Netherlands. And what they do is they bring together agri-food actors to accelerate the development and application of different kinds of innovation. There are around 100 companies involved, all connected to horticulture. And when you go there to this horticultural center, it is available and you can just go in. You can see a lot of cutting-edge technology, from LED lighting to vertical farming and many other innovations, for example, on the topics of seed. And this hub allows companies to market themselves. So it's also very important for the Netherlands and these actors as an international gateway to our sector in horticulture. All right, then this one. And this one I will spend some more time on, because this is the SABE scheme, which is very important for advisors in the Netherlands currently. So this part focuses on this part of the AKIS system, where we go into the advisory services. And this is one of the problems that was addressed in the OECD report. The OECD people concluded that a lot of knowledge in the Netherlands that is being developed doesn't flow to the farmers. And this is an issue, of course, because I myself and all these other researchers practically work together to make sure that farming becomes better and more sustainable. However, if our knowledge doesn't get there, then we have an issue. So that's why the government introduced the so-called SABE scheme, and that SABE scheme is necessary, as I will show you here, because the farmer is surrounded by a lot of different kinds of advisors, from cooperative, accountancy to real estate agents, and everything else in between. This makes it very difficult for the farmer to get independent, objective advice about farming procedures, farming activities. And one way the Dutch government is trying to address this as part of the CAP scheme is by introducing the SABE scheme, which stands for Agricultural Advisory and Education Subsidy Scheme, which basically means that farmers, but also advisors, can get a subsidy from the government in order to get educated about a certain level or about a certain topic that they want to address on their farm. It is meant, the scheme, to focus on the farmer, so on the farming activities and on this person itself. And it's really meant as a way to transfer research knowledge and knowledge from other parts of the AKIS system to the farm. The SABE scheme focuses on a few themes that are important for the Netherlands. Maybe you might already notice this has been an issue for years in the Netherlands, the nitrogen emission crisis that has been going on for a long time now. But it also focuses on nature-inclusive farming, so how to incorporate nature more in farming activities. Also a very important one, healthy soils, water and cropping systems. But for me, a very important one, it also focuses on entrepreneurship. Because although farmers want to become more sustainable, they should still be able to make a living out of their day-to-day practices. So this is also an essential part of the SABE scheme. And then there are 3 modes of learning. So you can get a subsidy, but you can get subsidy for different kinds of things. First of all, you can get a farmer, for example, but also an advisor can follow courses on different kind of themes that I just showed you via the so-called SABE vouchers. I think you can get, like for 1,500 euros, you can get vouchers, and it gives you the opportunity to follow a lot of different courses. You can also get individual advice from a certified, and that's a very important part, from a certified advisor on to the farmer. This has been used a lot within the SABE scheme. And you can also apply for subsidy for group-based knowledge sharing. So you share knowledge within a group and get extra input. This is a very important one, because in order for the system to work and for the vouchers to work, the farmers need to get advice from independent advisors. Only farm or advisors that are part of this register, the so-called VAS register, which includes a lot of independent advisors, everything from vets, veterinarians to farming advisors, must be included in this register that is maintained by the Dutch government. It has been evaluated, the SABE scheme, in 2024 by an independent organization to see if it works. And the conclusion is that it is regarded as rather effective, as it contributes and accelerates knowledge sharing among farmers. It has also increased our AKIS system because since the introduction of the SABE scheme, a lot of new independent advisors have been added to this register. But the voucher system, so the first part of the learning, this one, number 1, following courses training program via the SABE voucher, has been less of a success, finds this evaluation. Why, we don't know yet, so they're trying to figure out new ways of getting farmers to like the voucher system and use it more. And this is a conclusion from the OECD, which basically concludes that the SABE indeed has helped improve the Dutch agricultural knowledge and innovation system. Goed, then kennis op maat. a bit difficult to translate. If I translate it literally, it means knowledge on measure, but knowledge trying to get it to the farmer at least. And this is one that is very important for me as Wageningen University and Research. Because we, the researchers, the professors, produce extreme amounts of complex reports. We are extremely well in making reports that are difficult to understand for a lot of people, including farmers. With this system, with the kennis op maat system, we want to translate these reports and many others to farm level, so that the farm level can get a better understanding of what is actually being said in these reports. These reports are usually also very long, which is also very problematic for the farmers because they don't have the time to read through them. So what we are trying to do here is make these reports more available, more accessible to farmers, or make our research more available to farmers. And we do this by collaborating once again with the two top sectors I introduced before. This scheme, this measure, is actually part of the top sectors. This is the most important part of it. So we make sure that knowledge is transferred from reports and articles and made accessible directly to farmers. But it's no research development. So it's just focusing on making sure that knowledge is translated to the farm. We do not do any research within this regard. And the budget per year approximately is 2.5 million euros. And farmers can apply via subsidies for this measure. And there are a lot of topics we can address from Wageningen University and Research, from everything to plant health, wildlife management on farms, to resilience, long health of dairy calves, and many other topics that can be addressed via this scheme. And then the last one I will address for today, and that are the field labs. Very important right now, introduced under the Common Agricultural Policies by the Dutch government, in which also these governments, the 12 provinces, so local governments, participate as well. First of all, the field labs. These are locations across the Netherlands in which farmers and other actors, like for example processors, can test new innovations and demonstrate these in agriculture. These issues, or these field labs, are actually focusing on region-specific issues. Just like here on Cyprus, the Netherlands has many different problems, and they differ per region. We have, for example, very different soil types, peat, sand, just to name a few, clay soil, and these all comes with its own problems and own solutions. And that's why the field labs are focused on the regions. And they provide physical space for a lot of different experts to experiment with different types of new innovations. And sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work, sometimes they have to be improved. And once again, collaboration is key. So focus here is again on collaboration between education, businesses, government, and other actors. The approach is demand-driven. So we do not focus on what research wants, we focus on what the farmer wants. So the farmer notices things, and based on that, we try to design these field labs. We do not only focus on innovation in the technical sense. Innovation is also about social innovation, new ways of collaborating, for example, but also organizational innovations about how we can make processes more aligned and making sure that farmers get the right innovation on their farm. And why field labs? This is from a government website. First of all, it's to better integrate knowledge that we, for example, produce and innovation into the daily farming practices. Once again, this is farmer-focused, so that's why this one is a very important one. To develop farm systems suited to regional challenges and environmental balance. To support the government goals, and there are currently a lot of goals, especially with regards to making the Dutch agricultural sector more sustainable. And to offer stakeholders practical experiences, perspectives, and encourage mutual learning so that they really learn from each other. And these are some of the field labs. Some dots might be wrong, but it gives an approximation of the amount of field labs that there are in the Netherlands currently. And one of those field labs is, I'm going way too fast. These are some of the issues that are being addressed in these field labs. Just some, there are many more. For example, our testing with agroforestry, with climate neutral dairy farming, so how can we reduce the CO2 emissions from dairy farming, regenerative agriculture, but also short chain, so how can we reduce the space that exists between farmer and consumers. One of those field labs is the Farm of the Future in the Netherlands, which I've heard the delegation and minister will visit later this year as well. The Farm of the Future is not only a field lab. Part of the Farm of the Future is a field lab, but a lot of other stuff is also going on here. This is part of Wageningen University and Research. It's a huge amount of hectares where we do all kinds of tests with arable farming. And these tests include, for example, tests with strip cropping, so having different kind of crops next to each other. Circular fertilization, precision agriculture, and soil and water management. These are all issues, I guess, that are also very important for Cyprus. And then the last part of my presentation. Like I said, there are many challenges for the Dutch agricultural system as well. Two of those challenges have already been mentioned. Fragmentation. The system is still very fragmented. Another challenge for the Dutch AKIS system is, of course, that knowledge doesn't always flow immediately from research and advisors to the farmers. Another challenge that I want to address here is the issue of sustainability. So a few years ago, Wageningen University and Research started this project, Wageningen Perspectives on Agriculture, Food and Nature, in which we basically try to identify the main challenges that the Netherlands is facing with regards to agriculture, food and nature. In total, we defined 6 of these dilemmas. I'm not stating here that these are all. There are many more, for example, about maritime life, but these are very important to Dutch agriculture and how these are questions we should address in the future. One of those, for example, is how do we manage consumer behavior in the Netherlands? We eat a lot of meat, and there has to take place a reduction. But also, will the Netherlands contribute, how will the Netherlands continue to contribute to the global food supply chain? Will we focus on extreme production, so produce more and more and more, or will we produce more knowledge and other materials, technology? These issues are all connected to each other, so we cannot just deal with these issues alone. If you address this issue, you also have to address the other issues, so you have to have an integral approach. This is a very big issue because we often tend to work in the Netherlands and many other European countries as well in silos, while we all know why these issues should have been addressed integral, connected to each other. This was a conclusion from the OECD report that I showed you before, that the Dutch agricultural system is very strong, but it must prioritize environmental performance. So many of these issues should be given more priority. And that's the issue, and that's where I'm going to end my presentation here today. So currently, the Dutch agricultural system is still focused very much on efficiency and intensification, like we started off after the Second World War. But the OECD report suggests, and now I'm pressing the wrong button, that we should move more to social and environmental performance. So focus less on this, but still it's very important, but also more on that. These are some of the other conclusions that came from the OECD report about the challenges for the Dutch agricultural system. Farmers need more incentives to engage in the AKIS system, so more participation of the farmers in the AKIS system remains an issue. Making incentives for social and environmental sustainability factors more present, so do not only focus what I showed before, efficiency and intensification, but also more on the social and environmental aspects. And the advisory service needs more capacity related to the adoption of sustainable innovation. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, I'd be more than welcome to answer them. Thank you very much.
Ευχαριστούμε τον κύριο Allard Jellema. Λόγω περιορισμένου χρόνου θα δεχτούμε μέχρι 2 ερωτήσεις αν υπάρχουν. Για περισσότερες ερωτήσεις θα υπάρχει ευκαιρία για αργότερα.
Thank you. It was an extremely interesting presentation with a lot of material to digest. You have mentioned at some point a knowledge and innovation agenda. Do you have a body that is responsible for drafting this agenda or a mechanism for that purpose?
You mean the knowledge and innovation agenda, right?
Yes.
It's partly being developed by the government in collaboration with all the different kind of actors. So I showed you these top sectors, and these top sectors are made up of different people who are in charge of the top sectors. For example, members of my university, directors of my university, and of other organizations, for example, private sector. They are in charge of one top sector, and together they are trying to define, in collaboration with the government, different agenda-setting items that are put forward in the KIA, in the knowledge and innovation agenda.
Is this agenda related somehow to funding channels for research bodies or not?
Yeah, for each top sector there is an amount of money is available that they can use on research. So they have a specific amount, I don't know the exact numbers, but that they can use on research. One thing that is important to mention here is that these top sectors, like I said, they work together, so they share also a budget. Like, for example, the maritime top sector, what other top sector? The agriculture and the horticultural top sectors.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi. Can you please specify more about the certification of private advisor? What is required to be certified of the private advisors?
Well, in order...
you said they need to be independent, they need to be...
Yes,
yeah,
exactly. So, for example, you have the feeding organizations, or that produce feed, and they also have feeding advisors. And the problem over there is that they cannot be included in this register because they have an agenda. They want to sell as much feed as possible. The requirement is that you are as independent as possible. The exact demands for what is required to end up in the register, I don't really know. There are quite a lot, but you must be independent as possible. And it has been, like I said, the amount of people that have been entered into this register since the introduction of the SABA scheme has increased dramatically. But I will send you a list of conditions that have to be taken into account if you want to become member of this register.